Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. The case that we're going to be looking into today is the case of Kayleigh Haywood. Now, let me just say, I do want to mention that this case has a very important message that, we'd like to portray across to anyone who may find themselves in a situation like this. We just want to educate people and try and, stop these kinds of things from happening. And just to enlighten the dangers of speaking to strangers, not only just like in person, but online too, because online is a whole other world where people befriend other people. Young people who possibly may think that there's nothing wrong with it, they may even speak to them for, months, weeks on end, become really friendly with this person, and at the end of the day, you don't actually know who it is. Like, the person on the other end of that conversation could be a catfish. They could be a person that's a lot older who's grooming you. It's just to try and enlighten the dangers, because unfortunately that is what happened to Kayleigh, and it is just such a tragic case. So yeah, we just want to get the word out and try and stop these kinds of things from happening, to try and allow younger people to recognize possible dangers that they may be in. This case was suggested for that same reason. It was suggested by Natasha, and she thought it was a really important message to get across. That is why she suggested it to me to put into a video, so that, it can get out there, and just hoping that, other people may see it and then may realize that they might be in that kind of danger, having not realized it before. So thank you for that, Natasha. It's such a wonderful message to be portraying in under obviously tragic circumstances, but it is a case that can help others. So thank you for the suggestion. If you guys have any more, of course, let me know and I'll look into them for you. Kayleigh Haywood was born in August of 2000. She was born in Measham, Leicestershire. Apologies if I've said that wrong, because I probably have. And I mean, I'm from the UK, so I shouldn't have had to say it, but yeah, so there you go. Her parents were called Stephanie and Martin, and their family was big. Kayleigh was one of 7 children, so they had this huge family, and I believe Kayleigh was the sort of second youngest, and they absolutely adored, they had such a big family. Kayleigh loved living in such a big family. They were all really close. She was especially close to the youngest sibling, which was actually her youngest sister, and her mother. Her and her mother were like best friends. They were described as best friends. And it was just, they had such a close-knit relationship. Kayleigh was described as this outgoing, bubbly teenager. She was 15 at the time of this case actually happening. And it was said that she had a good head on her shoulders. So that makes this case even sadder, because describing her as having a good head on her shoulders and then what actually happened to her, it just kind of hits home these kind of things even more, kind of thing. So you may think that your child knows about all this stuff and has a good head on them, but just, you'll see as we get through it how it all played out, and it's just awful. And yeah, we just want to really, really spread the message. So as like many teenagers, Kayleigh was really social. She didn't have like this huge group of friends, but she had a lot of friends. And, she loved talking to them, hanging out with them when she could. The thing was with her friends is that a lot of them lived really far away. Not really far away, but a fair distance away. And so the point of communication between her and her friends would have been her phone. She used texting a lot, and she used social media a lot to chat with her friends. Mainly it was Facebook. And that was probably because you could have the groups on Facebook, so they could all get in a group chat and all just chat together. She was, as with so many teenagers around that time, and even now, like, Facebook is still huge. A lot of people spend a lot of time on it. And at the time, Kayleigh did. She would be on Facebook all the time, posting. Like, I believe she wouldn't go a couple of hours without posting something. Photos, status updates, whatever she wanted people to know, whatever she wanted to put out there, she did. She put on there. So she was very active on social media. And she was kind of one of the teenagers, as with nowadays, that just didn't really look away from a phone, because that was her main source of like socializing and communication. As it was said before, she had a good head on her. She already knew what she wanted to do for a job. She was 15, she was considering her options, and she decided that she actually wanted to be a hairdresser. So she had these plans, and she was just a 15-year-old teenager enjoying her life and just you know, enjoying planning what she wanted to do for the future. The thing was, she essentially was still a child, not a child, like a tiny child, but she was 15. She is not an adult yet. And unfortunately, she ended up in this situation that she didn't know how to handle. And I guess it was something that she's not really thought about before. Like, she's not experienced it, and therefore maybe it didn't cross her mind. I don't know. It might have done. That's just my assumption. So, as with many people, still, I guess people still do it now. She had people on her Facebook that she didn't know. So, and I mean, I'm guilty of that. When I was younger, I used to have people on my Facebook that I didn't know. Like, someone would add you, and I'd just think, yeah, cool, whatever, be friends. And I wouldn't do that now. Now that I'm obviously an adult, I've only got people I know on Facebook, because at the end of the day, it's personal and it's private, and I don't want anybody on there that I don't know. So as you sort of grow older and realize these things, then, you know, you kind of sort them out. But Kayleigh was 15 and she had a few people on there that she didn't know, and that was where this all stemmed from. At the time I was young, I didn't know the possible dangers behind like adding somebody on and talking to somebody on like Facebook that you didn't know. And unfortunately, that is exactly what happened to Kayleigh. On the 31st of October in 2015, she received a friend request from a man. Again, bearing in mind she's 15. So this man was called Luke Harlow, and he was 27 years old. He didn't actually have his age on his profile, and therefore Kayleigh didn't know how old he was. But she received a message from him saying, "Hi, how are you?" You know, just a generic thing, what a lot of people would do after adding someone. So she questions who it is. She replies with like, "Hi, who are you?" Which is good. You know, she's basically saying, "I don't know who you are, who are you?" And the way in which he replies just kind of, I don't know, makes her, I guess, believe that he's like legit and stuff. So he just replies saying like, "We're friend of friends, we've got so many mutual friends. I saw you on Facebook, I thought you was beautiful, and I decided to add you because we have so many mutual friends." So that straight away in maybe a younger person's mind makes you think, okay, we have friends with like, some of my friends are your friends, maybe it's not that bad, you know, maybe you're not a complete and utter stranger because you know people I know. And he got in there straight away with compliments. So straight away, he's calling this 15-year-old girl beautiful. And he didn't know her age at the time. Don't get me wrong, he didn't. But obviously, she looks quite young. You kind of get an idea, really. But he didn't actually know. So he's complimenting her, saying she's beautiful, and it flatters her, and it makes her feel really good about herself, like it would anyone. And at the age of 15, she's probably not had many people say that to her before. She's just getting into sort of that age where you start noticing boys and boys start noticing you. And she's got this older man, this, I guess, something like a bad boy. Like, you know you're not supposed to kind of talk to him, and he's calling her beautiful and complimenting her, and it really flattered her and made her feel really good about herself. He also said that he lived really close, which he lived in the town of Ipstock, which was just the town over. And then he said that he wanted to get to know her more. And they started to message each other like a lot. There were a lot of messages between them. Over the next few days, they messaged each other tons. And I guess that made her feel like she knew him a bit more. I don't know, they're talking all the time. And so you do get to know people a little bit more. But the message is that you don't know who that other person is that you're talking to, really. You just don't know. And, you know, you should never ever like arrange to meet somebody or anything like that. So anyway, they're chatting, they're flirting with each other. He's like saying all these flattering things all the time to her, and she didn't really accept them all. So she's like, "Oh no, I'm not beautiful," or whatever. And he'd be like, "Yes you are." That would make him do it more. Like, "Yes you are, and he'd just shower her with all these compliments even more. Made her feel really good about herself. And on his end, he's just building it all up, building up the trust, building up the confidence. And not only that, everything that he's saying makes her feel really good. It's, you know, it's nice to hear somebody saying that you're beautiful. Of course it is. And so she wanted to keep talking to him because of that, because he made her feel really good. Every time she had, say, an argument with someone or something like that, she would tell him and he would always be on her side. He would always say that she was right. He would always take her side. And he was just there as a supporting figure, making her feel better every time she felt a bit rubbish or whatever. Quite early on in their conversation, Luke did ask her her age and she did lie about it. She said that she was 19 because she knew. Obviously, it is illegal to do anything with a minor. So she knew that. She probably thought that he wouldn't talk to her if he knew her real age, and so she lied. She said that knowing she needed to be at least 18, she was 19. And Luke lied a little bit as well. He said he knocked a year off, so he said he was 26 and he was actually 27. Kayleigh's secret didn't stay secret very long though, because a few days after after Luke added her and they started chatting, she actually posted a picture on Facebook of her with her friends and she was in a school uniform. Now, of course, 19-year-olds won't be wearing a school uniform, and so he messaged her and asked her how old she actually was. She admitted it. She told him the truth and she said he was 15. And you might think that that is where it ended, because yes, initially he did think she was 19, but now he knows she's 15 and that he should not be talking to her. But it didn't end there. He just carried on talking to her. The thing was, he basically just said that it had to be more secret now. So you couldn't tell anyone and it would literally be their little secret. From pretty much the beginning of them starting to talk, he was hinting for them to meet. I believe within a couple of days, he's like, I want to meet you. I want to come and see you, blah, blah, blah. I want you to come to my house kind of thing. So you can see the pattern here. He is building up her confidence. He's building up her trust. She's beginning to think that she knows this man and that she likes this man because he is so lovely, and maybe she didn't find him attractive, but sometimes all people need are compliments and things to kind of share an attraction with someone that maybe his isn't like because of their looks. And she would have thought that he was like this really nice guy. He was supporting her, he was there for her. She just really liked him. He started going on about having this cute little dinner date, like they'd go to his house and they would eat, you know, he'd make them food and they would watch a movie and it would be like this cute little date. And maybe Kayleigh would have probably thought that sounded like really nice. It sounded like a lovely day out, doing something with somebody that she was just getting to know. But then things started on his part to turn sexual. He started saying like things that he wanted to do to her in bed and things like that. He began talking about being friends with benefits and that he wanted to have a sexual relationship with her. However, Kayleigh replied with saying like she wasn't ready yet. She didn't want that yet. She wasn't ready for that. But he carried on. He carried on pressing it a little bit and just sliding it in wherever he could. And eventually Kayleigh pretty much said to him that she'd probably have to be drunk first. This is when Luke got the plan together for her to come over. He basically said that he would buy her any alcohol she wanted. They would go over, eat chocolates, have a drink, watch films. And obviously that's just showing his predatory behaviour like all over. But she was young. They had this relationship that she thought she knew him and she didn't know his intentions. She was 15, she didn't have a clue. She was just really flattered by him. They decided on a date to meet up, which was the 13th of November in 2015, which was precisely 2 weeks after Luke had initially added her. So they would have been talking like non-stop for 2 weeks up until them kind of meeting. So when it got to the Friday, she had been coached by Luke on what to say because obviously her parents aren't going to let her go and meet a stranger. They ain't gonna do that. There is no chance. So Luke is basically telling her to ask if she can stay at a friend's, but a friend that they know. So that is what she does. And again, it's not unusual for Kayleigh to stay over at a friend's because they lived quite far away. So she would often do that. She'd often go over, stay over, overnight, and then come back the next day or whatever because, you know, travelling a fair way for a couple of hours is sometimes pointless when you can just stay over. So she'd stayed there before, never any issues. They knew this friend, they knew the parents. They said, okay, you know, they didn't see anything wrong with it. And they wouldn't have been if she was actually staying at that friend's. But she wasn't. So on that Friday, she's getting ready to go. Her mum gives her this £10 note and jokes with her to not spend it all at once. And off they go. Her father actually drops her off at this local swimming pool because that is where she said that a friend was in there doing lessons. They were going to meet up and then obviously go to her house. So she waits for him to leave. She watches him drive off, and once he's out of sight, she begins to walk down the road. She doesn't wait there for a friend to come out because she's not meeting her friend. She just walks down, presumably to head towards either where Luke had told her to meet him or his flat or, whatever. So she spends the Friday sort of day and night at Luke's. She's on social media, she's posting photos. She looks really happy. She looks like she's enjoying herself. Nothing seems amiss. The next day around dinner time, her mother receives a text from Kayleigh's phone and it's asking if she can stay another night, and thinking of course that she's at her friend's and she is safe and well, she agrees to it. She doesn't see anything wrong with it again. And it is believed that Kayleigh did send that text message, that she was having such a good night on the Friday that she did send the text message so she could stay another day with Luke. That up until that point, everything seemed fine and nothing was amiss. Even though she was lying to her parents and they didn't know where she was. Obviously, I'm not saying that part of it. I'm just mean with her and Luke, everything seemed to be going really well with them. And she did want to stay another night. That is what it's believed anyway. So the next day, because obviously she stayed the Friday, she asked on the Saturday if she could stay again. So this now brings us up to the Sunday. And there's a builder walking down a road and he picks up this smashed up Apple iPhone. And wondering whose it was, wanting to return it to whoever's it was, he brings up the last called number and he rings it, hoping again that it will be somebody who knows this phone and he can return it to their owner. So he rings it and a teenager picks up and it is Kayleigh's friend, the friend that she was supposed to be staying with, according to her mother, which she told her. So he says basically, I found this smashed up phone. This is the last number on it. I just want to give it back, essentially, and make sure that everything's okay. So Kayleigh's friend is confused as to why this phone is in this area because she doesn't really know the area, and why is Kayleigh's phone there, all smashed up? So anyway, once she puts the phone down with the builder, she rings Stephanie to tell her that Kayleigh's phone has been found smashed up. Now Stephanie is super confused at this point because, as you know, she's supposed to be staying with this friend. So this friend is now calling her and saying, is Kayleigh okay? Her phone's been found smashed up. And her mum's like, wait, she's supposed to be staying with you. What do you mean, is Kayleigh okay? So when Stephanie says to, her friend, I thought Kayleigh was supposed to be staying with you, she's like, no, I haven't seen her since Friday, since we broke up from school for the weekend. She hasn't seen her since then and she hasn't spoke to her. Of course, that is not anything you ever want to hear, that you don't know where your child is. You thought you knew where your child is and you actually don't. She's lied to you. And now you don't have a clue where she is. And now her phone has been found smashed up. She was absolutely petrified as to what had happened. And it's every parent's worst nightmare. It really is. They literally dropped their daughter off to stay with a friend that she never actually met that night. So they were so worried, they called the police. Of course you would do. The police came around and they began asking a lot of questions about Kayleigh, about, the kind of person that she was. And it came up that she was often on social media. She used that a lot. And so they seized her phone and her laptop and things to go through it, see whether there were any clues in her social media. They looked at her profile and up until Saturday night, she was posting everything. Everything seemed fine. There were photos. She looked happy. Again, the photos you couldn't really tell where she was in. They didn't reveal anything like that. But, she looked happy. She looked fine. There was nothing seemed to be amiss. Okay, it wasn't really usual that we're now on the Sunday and Kayleigh has not posted anything on social media because, again, as I've told you before, she was always on there, always posting. So yes, it was a bit abnormal that she'd not posted anything on the Sunday, but, they didn't really see too much amiss on her social media. So what they decided to do was to look into her messages, her private messages. And that was when they came across the message from Luke. He stuck out straight away because he looked older. And his profile depicted that of a much older person than Kayleigh. So Kayleigh's there, in a school uniform, posting pictures with her friends and cinema and food and things like that, normal teenager things. Whereas his profile is more drugs, alcohol, more adult themed kind of, I don't know, stuff that he's posting. So you could tell straight away the difference between the two. That he certainly is like an older man. But why was he messaging Kayleigh? That stuck out straight away. So they were questioning as to how these two got connected on Facebook, and they began to read the messages and they saw all the flirting and all of this stuff that is just, when you look at it, a man messaging like a minor, a child essentially, it just kind of makes your skin crawl really. So they found one message in that kind of made them very worried in particular, and it was a message that Luke had sent to her saying, "Can I kidnap you forever?" Which is weird, especially considering she was a minor. So yeah, if someone says that to me, I'll be like, bye-bye. But obviously, she was a kid, she didn't know. Within an hour of actually getting a phone and looking through those messages, the police were at Luke's house because obviously he is their number one suspect at this moment in time. He lets them in, they ask about Kayleigh, and he says yes, okay, she was here Friday and Saturday, but that she left like late at night. She actually left a few items with him, and he just thought she'd be back Sunday morning to come and collect them. He ended up passing those over to the police, but she just never came back, and that was like his story. That was what he said had happened. He was very interested in whether they had her phone, whether they had read her phone, and he kept asking questions about that, which was very suspicious straight away to the police, and it would be to anyone. It seemed like he was trying to hide something, like he didn't want them to read the messages on her phone. I don't know, like if he could have got hold of the phone, he would have deleted them, kind of thing. Not that that deletes them anyway, because they can still get them back, but yeah, a lot of people think that they can just delete them. Like, just press delete and they're gone forever, when it's not the case. Anyway, they take him down to the police station for questioning, and that is where he mentioned that he wasn't alone with Kayleigh that Saturday night. There was another man who had come round and spent the evening with him. This was his neighbour, 29-year-old Stephen Beedman. According to Luke, he'd also come round, they'd had a few drinks, and whatever, and then Stephen actually left with Kayleigh that Saturday night. Luke apparently waited around an hour. He didn't know what time it was, but he waited about an hour before he eventually went to bed himself, thinking they would either, I don't know, let themselves back in, let themselves into Steve's next door, something like that. He didn't really worry about it too much. The next day came, there was no Steve, there was no Kayleigh. He just figured that she'd gone round to his and that she would obviously come back and collect her stuff at some point during the Sunday. So they tried to find this Stephen guy. They couldn't find him for hours, but when they eventually did, I believe he was at a friend's or a relative's house, something like that. They managed to find him, but there was still no sign of Kayleigh. They officially arrested Stephen on suspicion of kidnap. They questioned him. Now, unfortunately, I can't put these in the video because they're copyrighted, so you can find them online if you're interested. Obviously, they're questioning Steve, they're questioning Luke, so they're both there. But during Luke's questioning, he is explaining things with big, grand hand gestures and, I don't know, like using his body, again with the microphone, using his body to do these grand hand gestures and things like that whilst he's explaining his story. And I'm not saying that it is fully a lie, but it's often linked with somebody actually telling a story or lying. So the police thought that was really, really weird straight away. But during the questioning, he basically stuck to the same story that he told the police earlier. When they picked Stephen up, his face looked like this. But I will get more into that later on and like explain that a bit more. During Stephen's questioning, he said that the way that he got involved in all of this is that Luke knocked onto his door that night asking for a mixer. So they were drinking and he wanted a mixer because he'd ran out. So he asked Stephen if he had any. Stephen said, "I'm sorry, I ain't got any. What do you want it for? Like, why?" And he told him, "I've got a bird around at mine." And I don't know how it happened, but maybe Stephen invited himself round or something, I don't know, but Stephen went round. And then this is where the stories just completely go in different directions. Stephen said that he drank with them for about 4 hours, that literally, because they'd been drinking all day before, Kayleigh and Luke were absolutely paralytic, to the point where they couldn't even really string a sentence together, and therefore couldn't have a conversation with Stephen. He got bored of that, and he left. He went home because he just had enough. And then he left Luke and Kayleigh alone in the house together. And that was the last time he saw her. But then you got Luke over there saying that he's left, you know, that Kayleigh and Stephen left and Luke was left alone in the flat and they went. So who's telling the truth? Obviously someone was lying. They had two different stories and they were both there. So yeah, somebody is lying somewhere. After all of this, they were on to the search for Kayleigh. They had a massive search for her. They really put tons of officers out there, as much as they could spare, because they knew it was time sensitive and that if maybe she had been kidnapped or, I don't know, was left somewhere injured, she could have been in peril, and they just needed to find her pretty quickly. So they had officers on foot, they had helicopters, they had sniffer dogs. They just were out there everywhere trying to look for Kayleigh. They ended up finding this bra in, I believe it was sort of near a field or in a field behind this parking lot, like near the woods. They brought that in for evidence, and when Stephanie came in, her mother, she confirmed that that was Kayleigh's bra. Now that would have made them think that something wasn't right straight away, because obviously you don't tend to just chuck your bra in a field and then leave it, generally. So that would have got them worried. Like, why was this bra here and we still didn't know where Kayleigh was? The investigation after finding that was stepped up even more. They had like 400 officers assigned to the case, along with volunteers, community, friends, family. Everyone was out there looking for her. And meanwhile, all this is going on, the police are still reading through those messages because there was a lot of them. The pair ended up exchanging 2,643 messages between each other. So obviously that's going to take a while to read through them all. And that was over the 2 weeks that they were talking. But the more that they read, the more they were concerned. He was being very sexual towards her. You know, as I've already told you, he was like describing the things that he wanted to do with her. So him saying all that stuff, the fact that Kayleigh's bra has been found in a field somewhere, it just wasn't looking good. They seized Luke's phone, and when they seized that, they saw that he didn't have over 2,600 messages between the pair. Oh no, he had 500. So I think someone's been doing a little bit of deleting. And guess what it was? It was the worst messages. So anything to do with her age, anything to do with coming down to his, anything to do sexual was all gone. And they only had these 500 messages then. So he's done a lot of deleting. He's took a lot of time to do that. And that's probably why he was so interested in Kayleigh's phone, whether they had it, whether they knew what was being said on it, because she wouldn't have deleted any of the messages. And so maybe he wanted to try and get hold of it and delete them himself. Although I still, like I said, I'm pretty sure you can still recover them. Not that they needed to, because they had Kayleigh's phone, which had them all. But yeah. They established that all contact from Kayleigh's phone had stopped, pretty much. So posting on social media, things like that, from 9 p.m. that Saturday. So that was the timeline that they were working off, that something bad had happened to her after that. After questioning people that knew Stephen, they found out that he had this storage locker, and they found this out at 3 a.m, like literally 3 a.m. in the morning, and they did not care that it was 3 a.m. They wanted to find Kayleigh. Maybe she was in there. A storage locker makes you think that that could be somewhere she could be held captive without people knowing. And so they woke up the person who could open the storage locker for them and literally went down there at like 3 a.m. So they looked at the CCTV. They did find Stephen on the CCTV, parked outside it in his van, but he never went in. I don't know how it works, the CCTV, whether it's stationary, whether it's motion based or whatever, whether it moves around, I don't know. But as far as the CCTV is concerned, he didn't go inside like the locker. Regardless of that, they opened the locker to look inside, and everything's kind of neat and tidy. Just whatever he's storing in there is there. Nothing seems amiss, like, you know, chucked in a hurry or anything like that. It all looks just normal. So because they kind of struck out on that, they begin searching the surrounding area. They know that on the Sunday, Stephen was there. So why was he there? He just sat in his car. Why was he there? They begin to, you know, widen the search, look around the area. And that is when they find this trash pile with a handbag and a cardigan in it. Again, taken into evidence, brought to Kayleigh's mother. She confirmed that they were Kayleigh's. So now things were looking even worse. They've got Kayleigh's bra. They have her cardigan and handbag, and still no Kayleigh. Along with all the sexual text messages and things like that, being with these two older men, it wasn't looking good at all, and they really did begin to doubt that she was actually still alive. This was all made worse when they interviewed neighbours around Luke's place, because they said that they heard screaming and all this banging that night. They just kind of didn't think it was anything. Like, I don't know whether they get a lot of drunk people in that area walking through and things, and people who are drunk are loud and noisy and scream and shout. That's what they put it down to anyway. One neighbour actually saw something. They heard this scream. They go to the window and they see this young woman running away. This other man runs up to her, tackles her to the ground and like pins her down. They were talking, shouting, whatever. He eventually lets her up. Well, he gets up, walks away. The girl is still on the ground. So he goes back, he helps her up, and then they walk away like hand in hand. The neighbour thought that this was just a domestic and that they had made up. And basically he said that this young girl was in a dress. So he assumed that she's been out on a night out, they're drunk, they're a couple, and they just had a bit of an argument and now they sorted it kind of thing because she was in this kind of dress. But it wasn't a dress. But this person didn't know that, of course. Stephen, who was still being questioned at the time, was asked about the injuries to his face. Do you remember those? Well, he said that he did it whilst working. So he was a landscaper and he would often go out and landscape people's gardens or whatever, and that he was doing it whilst doing his job and that he fell over, and that is how he got these marks all over his arms and his face. And again, I'll put the picture up just so you can see how bad they were. So they asked him where he was working and he told them, and they went straight out to that location, and that is where they found this bonfire that had not yet been lit. Inside the bonfire was this trash bag. They opened the trash bag and it is full of men's clothes that are full of blood. They sent that off for testing, and it came back that the blood was a match for Kayleigh Haywood, which then made them believe there were already suspicions that she was no longer alive. Now finding the blood and, you know, in a bonfire that had yet to be lit. I don't know why he didn't light it, but he didn't, which is good for the case, good for everything. I just don't know why he did it. Maybe he was going to go back. I don't know. Either way, it was really good for the police because they now had this evidence rather than him destroying it. But yeah, it wasn't looking good. They figured that now it would be a murder investigation rather than a kidnap, which is awful. So Luke and Stephen were rearrested, now under suspicion of murder instead of just kidnap like before. And they decided to re-question them because now everything was so much worse. I mean, kidnap is bad, but obviously murder is like a whole new level. And I guess because of that, Stephen started admitting things. Like, he started telling the truth a bit more. He was now admitting that he did leave the apartment with Kayleigh. So Luke, how he said that, you know, they both left together, that was actually true. Well, according to Stephen at least anyway. He's saying that he left with Kayleigh. He also said that the neighbour that saw the couple arguing and the girl being pinned down was probably them. But that he didn't pin her down. He was just kneeling down next to her because she was very drunk. And he was just seeing if she was alright. Yeah, okay. But either way, he said that kind of after that, he didn't know what happened to her. Like, I guess he said that they parted ways at some point, and then, you know, he didn't know what happened to her after that. Oh, he also said that he was pulling her around and stuff because she was so drunk. So he claimed that he didn't pin her down and that he was pulling her around because he was guiding her, like, she was that drunk that she couldn't walk properly, according to him. But he now admitted to being the last one to see Kayleigh. He was the last one alone with her, and nobody knows what's happened to her after that. So obviously that is very suspicious. He has all these marks on his face. Police didn't believe him. And after denying literally everything, now being faced with all this evidence, the police pretty much said to him that we have so much on you that even without a body and even without your confession, you'll probably still be found guilty of her kidnap and murder. And I guess that kind of swayed it for him, and he began telling the entire truth. Faced with, I don't know, pleading not guilty, having this huge trial, being found guilty, or compared to just admitting to what he'd done and probably getting like a lesser sentence for it because that's how it works, he decided that he was just going to admit to what he'd done. He confessed to the sexual assault and the murder of 15-year-old Kayleigh Haywood. Having finally admitted what he'd done, he gave the location of her body. He didn't know exactly where it was because he said that when he dumped her, it was dark. But he dumped her around that area that he was working at. But again, it was just a general location. On the 18th of November, the main search of the area was done. I believe they searched the night before, but it was very late when they found out this information. It was dark. They couldn't really do anything. They couldn't see anything. They did look, but they couldn't find her. So the majority of the search was done on the 18th. They searched all day and they still couldn't find her. I believe a few officers went back at night because they just wanted to bring Kayleigh home. And finally, eventually at 10 p.m. at night, her body was discovered. They were canvassing nearby this lake when they came across her body in the undergrowth. She was found naked, except from she was wearing just one sock, and her body was in this odd position, like really unnatural position, as if she would literally just been chucked there and it was all twisted over. Basically thrown away like a piece of trash, which is just one of the worst things because that poor girl, what happened to her was horrific. And then even in death, she was just disrespected so much. He just threw her away like she was a piece of garbage. She was a person. She was a human being. He stole her life and then he just threw her away. She had a lot of injuries covering her head area and her hands, a lot of self-defense, like wounds that are attributed to self-defense. She fought really hard until the very end. She battled for her life, but unfortunately wasn't strong enough to, I don't know, overpower him. It also looked like she had been bludgeoned to death, and later on when the autopsy came back, that was confirmed to be her cause of death. He bludgeoned her to death with a brick. We will get into that a little bit later on when he confesses more. Stephen Beedman was charged with sexual assault and murder, and Luke Harlow was charged with grooming and 2 counts of having sexual activity with a child. Stephen then confessed that basically he and Luke had been drinking with Kayleigh that night and that they both began sexually assaulting her until around 3 a.m. when she actually escaped. So she runs out of the house. I believe she was wearing no shoes and no pants. She just had like probably one of their t-shirts on, like an oversized top. So she runs out of there, she's half naked and she's screaming for help. And that's of course when the neighbours heard the screams. When that neighbour saw, you know, her being tackled, it was her. She was running out of there trying to escape him, but Stephen eventually caught up to her. He tackles her. He wrestled with her for a little bit before he then pulls her up and then walks away hand in hand. They head towards Luke's apartment, but for some reason they never get there. I don't know, at some point they get turned around or whatever, who knows. But he admits that he then sexually assaulted her in a close by park. I assume where her bra was found, because it was found not far from Luke's house, and like in a field in a park. So I assume that he just chucked her there. I don't know. But he then said that they both walked quite a while to a wooded area where he then killed her. He bludgeoned her to death with a brick. He beat her to death with a brick. A 15-year-old child was beaten to death with a brick by a 29-year-old man. Both Stephen and Luke denied falsely imprisoning Kayleigh for those like 6 hours between when Stephen came over and like before she escaped. But I mean, come on, if she's legging it out of there half naked with no freaking pants on and shoes on, screaming for help, then that seems to me like she's been kept against her will. Well, at least to me anyway. Luke did deny any knowledge of the murder, but police figured that he knew more than he was letting on. He probably knew about it. He might not have been involved in it, but maybe he probably knew what had happened. Maybe Stephen had told him. I mean, if you suddenly leave with a girl and then the girl's no longer with you, and then you see Stephen the next day, you're like, what happened? I don't know. Don't know if he knew. He said he didn't, although the police believed that he knew more than what he was telling them. Within just 4 days of Kayleigh actually going missing, Stephen Beedman was charged with her rape and murder, and Luke Harlow was also charged for the grooming and obviously the sexual activity with a child. It was also found that Luke had groomed 2 girls before. One was 13 years old and one was 15, both of which thought Luke was their boyfriend. So, he had practice in it, he was doing it, he'd done it before. Luke Harlow was sentenced to 12 years in prison, while Stephen Beedman was sentenced to life with a minimum of 35 years, which would make him, not liable for parole until 2050. However, he would never make it to that option of possible parole in 2050 because on the 8th of April in 2021, so obviously not even that long ago, while serving his 5th year into his life sentence, he actually died in hospital. Now, when it all came out, there wasn't a lot of information as to how he had died. There's a little bit more been released, but I don't think they've fully released everything yet. So they're now saying that his cause of death included oxygen deprivation to the brain and cardiac arrest, and that it was pending laboratory tests. So I don't know the ins and outs of it. I don't know whether it was natural, whether somebody, murdered him in there. I don't know. Who knows? I guess we'll find out more as more information comes out, but that is all that's out there at the moment. That's all that I could find. Kayleigh's story is a devastating one, and I really, really do pray that it can educate others. Her name lives on The story surrounding it is horrific, and it's something you would never ever want to happen to her or anyone else, but it has changed so many lives already. This short film was actually produced by the Lancashire Police along with Affixus Films and a lot of input from Kayleigh's parents, and it is called Kayleigh's Love Story. I'll link it in the description below, but I've watched it. It's about 5 minutes long, and it just tells from like the moment of meeting Luke to the moment of her death, and it's just such a short little story just of what happened to Kayleigh in those 13 days, how it can educate people. And people may not, like Kayleigh, think there's anything wrong with it, but you know, there is. And what happened to her is awful, and it's just her parents are trying to stop it from happening to other kids. So please watch it. If you know anyone, you know, get them to watch it, show it anywhere you can. It's literally 5 minutes out of your life. It just shows how dangerous the world can be, how dangerous the online world can be, and just allows people to not hide things and consider showing it to adults. Maybe they're unsure of something and they don't know what to do about it. So just go and show your parents. Just go and show anyone and ask them about it. Don't try and hide things and keep secrets, because you could really be in danger. I think as well, maybe if Stephen hadn't got involved, maybe Kayleigh would have been fine. Maybe Luke would have gotten drunk and whatever. Maybe he would have sexually assaulted her. I'm not saying that he wouldn't, but maybe she would have still been alive. It seems that when Stephen got into the picture, that's when things just went terribly wrong. Stephen was also found to have, later on, I believe, child pornography, graphic child pornography, so he was not a right un. And it's believed that after looking at all these things, that when he got the chance to do it to someone, he did to a child, and Kayleigh, unfortunately, was that child. I mean, the world's just like a better place with, well, he was behind bars. He is now no longer with us. The world doesn't suffer for that. Yeah. My heart goes out to Kayleigh and her family. Her life was stolen at 15. She never got the chance to be a hairdresser and live a life and have a family of her own. And it's all because of one man adding her on Facebook and just starting chatting to her. It's just tragic. But yeah, that is the end of the case. Give me a big thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for similar content if you've enjoyed it. Anyway guys, that's all I have today on the case of Kayleigh Haywood. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, bye.